Thank you very much. Typically Scottish, we're giving you value for money. We've got 2 for 1 this afternoon, and Susanne, who's the lead officer in terms of social work, will touch on exactly the kind of professional support that we have in the city for asylum seekers and many individuals that have come to Glasgow. First of all, I want to give thank you to the offer to come here today to explain what Glasgow and Scotland and the UK are doing, recognising that mainland Europe has even many more challenges because of the proximity of so many nations beside each other. We do have obviously the water between our nations and our island, and sometimes that can create a greater divide, as we experienced in the summer when we made the wisest decision of the Brexit report. But there we go. Second thing I want to say is that we are all in different ways either fleeing from things or are economic migrants. My own family background is from Ireland, which is a particular feature of the city of Glasgow. Over a third of Glasgow can trace their roots back to either Ireland itself or the Highland parts of Scotland in terms of internal migration. So the important history of our city is that we have been built, shaped, defined and understood our sensibilities because of the diversity that we have. We also have a commitment in Glasgow. Our slogan is "People make Glasgow," and we don't define people as only Glaswegians or Scots who make our city. Our city is enriched and developed and will continue to be enriched and developed because of the diversity of the many peoples that have come to us. Politically in the city, there's broad consensus and support for our commitment and strategies, irrespective of the political views on the council. What I would like to say is that we have a fairly unanimous support on our council for the strategy that we have to support particularly asylum seekers in terms of recent developments. And I do want to remind people of the kind of story that we've all had. I mean, when I was, prior to being a council leader, I've been a parliamentarian in the Scottish Parliament. And when it was established in 1999, the very first venue was the Church of Scotland, the Presbyterian Church in the city of Edinburgh, the most definably Presbyterian city in Scotland. And you take an oath of allegiance when you are asked to be sworn in as a member of Parliament. In the same place, 70 years earlier, a report had been produced in the Church of Scotland that said people like my grandmother and grandfather were not welcome in Glasgow because they threatened the future of the Scottish race, and that the Irish should be sent back home to where they belong. And yet in 70 years, Scotland had changed so much that the grandchild of one of those folk that was asked not to stay there could actually take in the exact same place that oath of allegiance that perhaps had been suggested was inappropriate 70, 80 years earlier. So things can change, and whilst we're in the eye of a storm at the moment because of the pressure politically and economically on all our towns and cities, we need to try and respond as best we can to that. So the city of Glasgow, which is about 600,000 population, it is the largest city in Scotland. It is one of the major cities in the United Kingdom, and that we have worked in partnership for a number of years now to try and address many of the pressures that have presented themselves to us over the years. And I've served in 2 different occasions as the council leader, 97 to 99 and from 2015 to date. And in both those occasions we've been confronted with challenges in terms of what we do as a city. So we've tried to respond by creating the dialogue, which is about a positive engagement with newcomers to Glasgow, irrespective of the economic or social circumstances that have driven them to the city. And the people of Glasgow, I think, broadly have responded to that. When you're from Glasgow, you're defined as a Glaswegian, and we actually now have a campaign in the city that is a grassroots campaign of individuals coming to the city that we adopt or support, and we call them Refuwegians, to make sure that we have collaborating with them in terms of the best ways forward. But the benefit to Glasgow of the programme is that many of the young children from these families that have come have actually made a massive contribution to our educational improvement. We have seen some tremendous improvements in some of our city schools because of the drive and energy and the need for individuals to want their children to do much better than they've experienced because of where they've come from, because of the economic and social circumstances that they've had. Susanne, who's with me, will touch on specifically what we do in terms of those things over the period. But what I would guarantee is that we in Glasgow want to make sure that we step up to the plate. And in terms of the UK, we are, I think, the most committed city of all the British cities in respect of our response to difficulties. We responded to the Kosovo crisis in the late 1990s. We've responded to some of the challenges in the African continent in terms of what's happened in Rwanda and the Congo. And we've also identified ways in which we're giving support in recent period to Syrian refugees. We've given commitments during the Refugee Week that we have in the country, where we will indicate that refugees are welcome in the city, and we've actually put those banners across our city chambers. Sometimes you got pretty odd phone calls on the Monday morning after you put them in over the weekend, but I think the big message was to say that we are united in Glasgow on these things. And what I do want to say in terms of what we need to do in the future is that we need to work with partner organisations, and there are a range of services that we need to work on, and there are two challenges in Scotland. One is to work with the Home Office in the UK to ensure that national resources are provided so that people don't feel resentful, angry, bitter and divided. So we need to keep working with our national UK government on that. Some of that context has changed because of the decision of the United Kingdom to vote to leave the European Union whenever that may be. The truth of the matter is it's created a more difficult climate, as most referendums do, and I don't need to teach anybody in this room, particularly in Italy, about the divisiveness that occasionally referendums can throw up. We've had two in Scotland, one for the Scottish question and one for the European question. The country is a lot angrier after both those occasions than it was before, and I worry about the long-term impact on that. But we will continue to work in ensuring that we build a much more collegiate response in our city. But we have a major challenge at the moment in terms of unaccompanied asylum seekers, and Susanne will touch upon this. But I want to really conclude and say that everybody in this room, I think, have arrived here because they have a genuine social commitment to try to find a better way in which our towns and cities can manage, and how we can manage the pressures that global change is occurring. And I know that Glasgow is, whilst we're not very good at national football, we are obsessed with football in Glasgow. And one of the stories I always tell is the fantastic story of probably the greatest football team, or national football team, and apologies to anyone who feels passionate about their own national team, but Brazil 1970 team, you could rhyme the players' names off in terms of Jairzinho, Revellino, Gerson, Tostão and Pelé. And I always say to people, who was the centre-back? And everybody scratches their head, and you find out it's a guy called Wilson Piazza. And they asked Wilson Piazza years later, how did it feel to be in the best ever football team in the world? And Wilson tells a fantastic story that he said, I was from the Mineiro region of Brazil, and a childhood story is that the forest was on fire and a little hummingbird was coming backwards and forwards and getting water from the river and dropping it onto the fire. And the cynical older bird said, why are you bothering doing that? And the childhood story was the hummingbird said, I'm only playing my part. And Wilson Piazza said, I was only playing my part in the greatest football team in the world. And I think by coming together today and by sharing our experience and taking that experience back, I hope we are playing our part to building the more just and socially fair and decent world that everybody should have the chance and opportunity to have. And certainly in Glasgow's terms, that we are committed to doing that, and we want to make a difference for the future for all individuals who present themselves to our great city for succour, safety and asylum. Can I now pass over to Susanne, who will touch on what we do in terms of our response, particularly in recent months, and I hope that that gives you a flavour of what I think is the Glasgow approach to the very complex issue of how we provide support to some of our very neediest people in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here as an officer, not as a politician. Also as a Glaswegian, I've lived in the city all of my life and worked in the city and for the city for the last 28 years, and I am tremendously proud of the record that Glasgow has in welcoming refugees and asylum seekers, and to have been part of that. I want to talk to you briefly about a new approach that we're taking to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, because I do think and hope, having listened to people this morning and this afternoon, that it may be of some use to you. Pope Francis does urge us to find new ways to make peace, and in local government in Glasgow, we want to develop a new way to facilitate and support our own citizens within Glasgow, to make a very personal contribution to support unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. We believe strongly that by working with our own communities to ensure that their response can be seen as part of the statutory response, then those partnerships between young people coming to our city unaccompanied will help promote stronger and more positive relationships. We have a very long history of supporting unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. As our council leader pointed out, we've supported a range of young people, mainly from Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, China, Eritrea, and more recently, Syria. They arrive in our city through various forums, and the UK government has made some commitment to increasing and improving its support and welcome. We are urging the UK government to make good the promises that they have made, and we've been clear that we want to be an integral part to the UK response, particularly given that we are the leading authority in our own country in Scotland. You may not know, but in our legal system, young unaccompanied asylum-seeking children have the same legal status as young people in local authority care, so they should be accommodated in foster care or residential children's homes. And we're really keen to make sure that we support more unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. If we only place them in foster care and residential care, we would not be able to do that. At a practical level, our own system of care in foster care and residential care is saturated. And if that's our only response, then we would only be able to respond to a handful, really. At a professional level, I have really strong concern that in an ordinary situation within Glasgow, if any of our Indigenous population need to come into care, our first port of call is their own extended family. We work really hard with extended families to look after their own children with support from ourselves. We call that kinship support. And by definition, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are denied that right coming into the UK and coming into Scotland, and have to move straight to care and don't have that opportunity of normal family life. The other thing is that our experience of working with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children is really interesting, and that while they have witnessed recent trauma and conflict, actually they have had very, very secure experiences of early childhood. By definition, if you have a family that love you enough to send you on your own halfway across the world with the hope of a better future for you, you've had a very secure experience of childhood. Our young unaccompanied asylum-seeking children come hugely resilient, able to make the best and most of any opportunity available to them. As our leader pointed out, they have made massive contribution to our education system within Glasgow. They're very committed to their own education. In short, they don't actually need to be in foster care or residential care. And by putting them there, we are denying them the rights that our own children have. Lastly, in Glasgow, as our leader says, we have been dismayed by some of the very inflammatory, discriminatory and frankly offensive rhetoric that there has been recently surrounding refugees, asylum seekers and unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. We know that in our city there are many, many more people who want to make some personal and positive contribution, and perhaps their voices are not being heard. We feel that as a City Council, it is our duty to provide those very good people of Glasgow with an opportunity for their voice to be heard, and for that voice to be made concrete by a real contribution to the lives of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. We need to find a way for the peaceful, welcoming people of Glasgow to have their voice heard and support them in being proactive in providing a response. So our solution has been to work in partnership with our faith-based communities and also with our third sector organisations who are already in touch with Glaswegians, who do want to make a difference and do want to help unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. We're working with them to identify families living in our own communities who are willing and able to offer accommodation and support. So many of the families that you will have experienced making those contributions, but what we want to do in Glasgow is we want the state to step up and help those people make that a real contribution. So we're going to assess those families about their suitability and capacity to offer accommodation and support. And with the information we have on our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, we are going to match those young people to families in the communities. This will not be foster care. This is not the same as foster care, but much more like kinship care. So essentially what we want to do is to create and support a new extended family. We want to allow the people of Glasgow to be the extended family for these unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and not put them in formal care placements. It will allow unaccompanied asylum-seeking children to experience family life, but it will also allow the ordinary people of Glasgow to step forward and be visible in making that contribution and allowing us to find new ways to make peace. It will also allow us to take many more young unaccompanied asylum-seeking children than we have or would be able to do if we only use formal care. We do still have some hurdles, as Councillor McAveety pointed out. We need our Westminster and our Scottish governments to provide logistical and financial support, which will allow us in turn to support families and unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Our faith communities and our third sector are fully committed in supporting us. Their response when we first started speaking to them was, "Why has it taken you so long to come to speak to us?" We have a number of them already expressing a wish to open their own homes and their own families to look after these children. And many of them are actually from our settled refugee community who, having had that experience, now want to open their homes to these unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. And we believe strongly that if we can tap into those positive elements of our own existing communities, then we can provide a robust, tangible response to the negative rhetoric and behaviours and make a real change in terms of the debate and the discussion in Scotland and in the UK on refugees. So thank you so much for listening. It has been a huge honour and privilege to be here amongst you as an imposter, as an officer rather than a politician. I very much look forward to the rest of the contributions and hope that there's something in our experience that some of you would be able to take back. Thank you.